My first time bargaining at the market. Have you ever felt completely lost in a sea of colors, sounds, and unfamiliar faces? Imagine stepping into a bustling market where everyone seems to know the rules except you. Today's story will take you on an adventure that will make you laugh, cringe, and maybe even inspire you to try something new. If you're learning English and want to improve your vocabulary while enjoying a relatable story, you're in the right place. Subscribe now to Story-Driven English for more stories that will boost your English skills while entertaining you. The alarm blared at 6 a.m., and I groaned as I rolled over to silence it. My first week in Thailand, and I was already questioning my life choices. The tiny apartment I had rented for my 3-month teaching program was hot despite the early ice hour. I had left the comfort of my American suburban life to teach English in Bangkok, and culture shock was hitting me hard. "Rise and shine, Alex," I told myself, trying to summon some enthusiasm. My Thai colleague, Somchai, had invited me to visit the local market today. "You must see real Thailand," he had insisted with a wide smile, "and learn to bargain. Very important skill here." Bargaining. The very word made me nervous. Where I came from, prices were fixed, printed on tags, non-negotiable. The idea of haggling over prices seemed both foreign and slightly uncomfortable. What if I offended someone? What if I made a fool of myself? These thoughts swirled in my head as I got ready. I splashed cold water on my face and looked in the mirror. My blonde hair was already sticking to my forehead from the humidity. "You can do this," I whispered to my reflection. "It's just shopping, with extra steps." By 7:30 a.m., I was waiting outside my apartment building. The morning air was already thick with heat and the scent of street food cooking nearby. Motorcycles zipped past, weaving through traffic with a confidence that amazed me. A few minutes later, Somchai pulled up on his scooter. "Good morning, teacher," he called out cheerfully. Somchai always referred to me as teacher, even outside of school. "Ready for big adventure?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, climbing onto the back of his scooter. I gripped the seat tightly as we merged into the chaotic morning traffic. "Remember," Somchai shouted over his shoulder, "at market, first price never real price, always too high for foreigners. You must bargain." "How much should I offer?" I asked, raising my voice above the traffic noise. "Start with half, they expect it. It's like a game." His laughter floated back to me as we swerved around a tuk-tuk. Half? That seemed so rude. In my mind, I practiced what I might say. "Excuse me, could you possibly consider accepting half of your stated price?" "No, too formal. That's too expensive. Too blunt." My thoughts were interrupted as Somchai made a sharp turn, and I clutched his shoulders to keep from falling off. 20 minutes later, we arrived at Chatuchak Weekend Market. I had read about it in my guidebook, one of the world's largest outdoor markets with thousands of stalls selling everything imaginable. But reading about it and experiencing it were two entirely different things. The market was a sensory overload. Vibrant colors from hanging textiles and displays of exotic fruits. The cacophony of voices haggling in Thai, English, and various other languages. The mingling aromas of spices, incense, and street food cooking on portable grills. And the press, of bodies, tourists and locals alike, moving through narrow aisles between stalls. Wow, I breathed, taking it all in. This is Yui intense, Somchai grinned. This is Thailand. Come, we start easy. First, breakfast. He led me to a food section where small plastic stools were arranged around portable tables. We sat down and Somchai ordered something in rapid Thai. Soon 2 steaming bowls of noodle soup appeared before us. Tom Yum noodles, Somchai explained. Good for beginners, not too spicy. The soup was delicious, tangy, slightly spicy, with plump shrimp and mushrooms. As I slurped the noodles, I noticed Somchai watching me with amusement. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. You eat like Thai already, he said, laughing. With good sounds, shows appreciation. I hadn't even realized I was making noise while eating. Back home, that would have been considered rude. Another cultural difference to navigate. After breakfast, Somchai announced it was time for my first bargaining lesson. He led me to a section with clothing stalls. The aisles were narrow, and merchandise spilled out from each stall, colorful. Shirts, dresses, pants, all displayed on racks or hanging from the canopy tops. Look for something you like, Somchai instructed. Then we practice. I browsed through several stalls until a light blue shirt with an elephant embroidered on the pocket caught my eye. It looked perfect for the hot weather, and I'd been told elephant symbols were considered lucky in Thailand. This one, I said, pointing to the shirt. Somchai nodded approvingly. Good choice. Now, ask price but don't look too interested. I approached. The vendor, a middle-aged Thai woman with a friendly face. Excuse me, how much is this shirt? I asked, trying to sound casual. For you, special price. 300 baht, she replied promptly. I glanced at Somchai, who gave me a subtle head shake indicating the price was too high. Would you take 150 baht? I asked hesitantly, following Somchai's earlier advice to offer half. The vendor's eyes widened dramatically. 150? No, very good quality. Look, real cotton. She rubbed the fabric between her fingers. 280 baht, best price for you. I froze, unsure what to do next. Somchai stepped in smoothly. 200 baht, he countered. 250, the vendor replied quickly. Somchai made a show of pulling me away. Too expensive. We look somewhere else. To my surprise, the vendor called after us. Okay, 225 baht. Final price. Somchai looked at me questioningly. I nodded and he turned back to the vendor. Deal. As I handed over the money, the vendor smiled. Good price. You wear. Very handsome. She carefully folded the shirt and placed it in a plastic bag. When we walked away, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and guilt. Did I just save 75 baht? I asked Somchai. Yes, very good for first time, he said, patting my shoulder. You pay about... He calculated in his head, $7 instead of $9. But was it fair? I mean, she seemed nice. Fair for both, Somchai assured me. She still makes profit. If priced too low, she would not sell. Remember, bargaining is expected. She already set first price high because you are foreigner. As we continued through the market, I began to understand what Somchai meant. I observed other transactions and noticed the rhythm of the bargaining dance. The offer, the counter-offer, the theatrical walking away, and often the calling back. We stopped at a stall selling fruit. and I marveled at the varieties I'd never seen before. Spiky red rambutans, purple mangosteens, and the infamous durian, which I recognized from its distinctive odor even before I saw it. "Would you like to try?" asked the fruit vendor, a young woman with a bright smile. She held out a slice of yellow fruit. "What is it?" I asked. "Mango." "Very sweet," she replied. The mango was indeed delightfully sweet and juicy. Emboldened by my earlier success, I decided to try bargaining on my own. "How much for a box of mangoes?" 120 baht, she answered. I remembered Chai's advice. 60 baht, I offered. The vendor laughed. No, these are sweet mangoes, best quality. 100 baht. 80 baht, I countered, surprising myself with my growing confidence. 90 baht and I give you extra one, she said. Deal, I agreed, feeling quite pleased with myself. I paid her and received a container with 6 slices of mango, plus an extra one that she placed on top with a wink. Chai, who had been watching from a short distance, approached with an approving nod. "You learn fast. Now you're ready for our bigger challenge." The bigger challenge turned out to be a section of the market selling handicrafts and souvenirs. Here the stalls were packed with intricate wood carvings, textiles, jewelry, and artwork. I was immediately drawn to a small wooden elephant figurine, exquisitely detailed with a raised trunk, symbolizing good luck. The vendor, an older man with kind eyes and weathered hands that spoke of years of craftsmanship, noticed my interest. "You have good eye," he said in English. "This elephant carved from teak wood. Very auspicious." "How much?" I asked, mentally preparing for the bargaining ritual. 600 baht, he replied. "Special price because I carve myself." I hesitated. This was more expensive than the shirt or fruit, and the fact that he had made it himself made me reluctant to haggle too aggressively. Yet Chai had emphasized that bargaining was expected regardless of the item. "It's beautiful work," I said, sincerely. "Would you consider 400 baht?" I offered, not quite having the price out of respect for his craftsmanship. The vendor studied me for a moment, then smiled. "You are teacher?" he asked unexpectedly. Surprised, I nodded. "Yes. How did you know?" "My daughter is teacher, too." "I give you teacher discount. 500 baht. 450? I suggested. He chuckled and wrapped the elephant carefully in paper. 475. For good luck in teaching. I paid gladly, feeling this was less a victory in bargaining and more a meaningful exchange. As he handed me the package, he added, "Elephant trunk up means good fortune coming. Keep in classroom." Throughout the day, I continued to practice my newfound bargaining skills. With each transaction, I grew more comfortable with the back-and-forth nature of the process. I bought a colorful scarf for my mother, a set of wooden cooking utensils for my apartment, and a small painting of a Thai temple that caught my eye. By midday, the heat had intensified, and both Chai and I were ready for a break. We found a small cafe at the edge of the market where electric fans provided some relief from the heat. I sipped a cold Thai tea while Chai enjoyed an iced coffee. "You are natural bargainer," Chai declared. "Not like most foreigners. They either pay full price because they feel bad, or they bargain too hard and make vendors angry." I think I'm starting to understand the culture behind it, I replied. It's not just about the money, is it? It's like a social interaction. Exactly. Somchai's face lit up. Is conversation, relationship. Good bargaining means both people happy at end, not just lowest price. As we rested, I observed a group of Western tourists at a nearby stall. They were attempting to bargain for some silk scarves, but their approach was all wrong. They were aggressive, almost demanding, and the vendor's initially friendly expression had hardened into polite resistance. They're doing it wrong, aren't they? I asked Somchai quietly. He nodded. Too serious. No smile. Bargaining should have smile, maybe joke. They make it fight about money. I watched as the tourists eventually walked away without purchasing anything, and the vendor shook her head, in what appeared to be relief rather than disappointment. I think I've been overthinking this whole thing, I admitted. I was so worried about offending someone or doing it wrong that I almost didn't want to try. Many things in Thailand like this, Somchai mused, look complicated from outside but simple when you understand heart of it. Like our language, many tones, difficult for foreigners, but children learn easily because they don't worry, just speak. After our break, Somchai suggested we explore the part of the market dedicated to street food. The aromas were irresistible. Grilled satay skewers, fragrant curries, crispy pancakes filled with sweet or savory fillings. We sampled small portions from different vendors, and I even attempted to order in basic Thai phrases I had been learning, much to the delight of the food sellers. At one stall, I noticed an elderly woman making what looked like tiny pancakes, in a special pan with circular indentations. What are those? I asked Somchai. Kanom krok, he replied. Coconut pudding. Very Thai dessert. The little coconut puddings looked delicious. Crispy on the outside, soft and creamy on the inside. Some topped with green onions, others with corn or taro. I approached the vendor and, without prompting from Somchai, tried my bargaining skills again. Sawadi ka, I greeted in Thai. How much for Kanom krok? I asked, pointing at the treats. The elderly woman smiled, revealing beetle-stained teeth. 40 baht for 8 pieces, she replied. Would 30 baht be okay? I asked with a friendly smile. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Okay, 30 baht. As she packaged the warm treats, she added an extra one on top. For good Thai speaking, she said in broken English. This small interaction filled me with disproportionate joy. Not only had I successfully bargained on my own, but I had also made a connection across the language barrier. The woman had recognized and rewarded my attempt to speak her language, just as I always appreciated when my Thai students tried hard with their English. As the afternoon progressed, we moved to a section of the market selling household items. I needed a few things for my apartment, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity to both furnish my place and practice my bargaining. At one stall, I found a set of colorful ceramic bowls that would brighten up my kitchen. The vendor, a middle-aged man with spectacles, quoted 70 baht per bowl. I offered 150 baht for 3 bowls, and after some back and forth, we settled on 200 baht. He carefully wrapped each bowl in newspaper before placing them in a bag. You live in Thailand? He asked as he handed me my purchase. Yes, for 3 months. I'm teaching English, I replied. Ah, good, good. My son learning English in school. Very important for future. Before I could respond, a commotion broke out. At a nearby stall, a Western man was arguing loudly with a vendor, his face flushed with anger. "This is highway robbery," he shouted in English. "I know you're trying to rip me off because I'm a foreigner." The vendor, a woman probably in her 50s, maintained a calm exterior, but I could see the tension in her posture. She repeatedly stated her price in English, explaining that it was already discounted. Somchai shook his head disapprovingly. "Big mistake," he murmured. "Losing face in public. Very bad in Thai culture." The Western man eventually stormed off, without buying anything, and the vendor turned away to arrange her merchandise, her movements stiff with suppressed emotion. "I feel embarrassed for him," I admitted to Somchai. "He doesn't understand, does he?" "Many tourists think Thailand is trying to cheat them," Somchai explained. "They don't see that bargaining is part of our culture, not a trick. And they forget that even if they pay foreigner price, it is still very cheap for them." His words made me reflect on my own privilege. Even if I occasionally paid more than a local would, the difference was minimal in terms of my own currency. And wasn't the experience, the human connection, the cultural exchange, worth far more than a few extra baht? As the afternoon wore on, the market seemed to grow even more crowded. I was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the sensory input and slightly claustrophobic in the packed aisles. Somchai sensed my fatigue. "One more section before we go," he suggested. "Fresh flowers, just to look. Very beautiful." He led me to an area where the scent of flowers replaced the mixed aromas we had been experiencing all day. Stalls displayed garlands of jasmine, lotus blossoms floating in water, and orchids in every imaginable color. It was a peaceful oasis in the busy market. While wandering through the flower section, I spotted a small stall somewhat set apart from the others. It was less flashy than its neighbors, with a simple display of potted plants and herbs. The vendor, an elderly woman with a deeply lined face and silver hair pulled back in a bun, sat quietly watching the passers-by. Something drew me to her stall. Perhaps it was her calm demeanor amid the market chaos, or the healthy glow of her plants compared to some of the wilting displays nearby. I approached and smiled at her. To my surprise, instead of immediately trying to sell me something, she smiled back and asked in heavily accented English, "What do you seek today?" The question seemed deeper than a simple sales inquiry. I hesitated, then answered honestly, "I'm new to Thailand. I'm trying to understand the culture better." She nodded as if this was a perfectly reasonable market purchase. "You teacher," she stated rather than asked. When I confirmed with surprise, she chuckled. "Teacher eyes, always watching, learning." Her observation struck me. Indeed, throughout the day I had been observing intently, trying to absorb not just the mechanics of bargaining, but the cultural nuances behind it. The woman reached behind her display and brought out a small potted herb with delicate leaves. "Buy makroot," she said. "You call lime leaf for cooking, for medicine, for welcome spirits to new home." "How much?" I asked, genuinely interested. "For new teacher in Thailand, 80 baht," she replied. I considered whether to bargain, then decided to offer 70 baht, mostly to honor the cultural practice we'd been discussing all day. To my surprise, she shook her head, not to reject my offer but in gentle amusement. No bargain for first plant in new home, she explained. Bad luck. 80 baht is already fair price. You know this, she added with a knowing look that suggested she saw right through me. Chastened and intrigued by this exception to the bargaining rule, I paid the full price. As she handed me the plant, she added, care for it well. When repot. To bigger container, your Thailand experience also grow. This metaphorical advice stayed with me as Somchai and I finally made our way out of the market. My arms were full of purchases, and my mind was buzzing with new experiences and insights. On the ride back to my apartment, holding my bags carefully, while balancing on the back of Somchai's scooter, I reflected on the day. What had begun as an intimidating challenge, learning to bargain in a foreign culture, had evolved into a profound lesson about human connection and cultural understanding. Thank you for today, I told Somchai when we arrived at my building. I learned more than just bargaining. You are welcome, Teacher Alex, he replied with his characteristic smile. Next weekend, floating market. Different experience. I laughed and waved goodbye as he sped off. Inside my small apartment, I carefully unpacked my treasures from the elephant figurine, the blue shirt, the ceramic bowls, and finally the lime leaf plant, which I placed on my windowsill. Looking at my purchases, I realized they represented more than just things. They were tangible reminders of interactions, moments of connection across cultural and language barriers. The shirt wasn't just a shirt. It was the memory of my first successful bargaining attempt. The elephant wasn't just a decoration. It was the craftsman's good wishes for my teaching career. The lime leaf plant wasn't just an herb. It was a wise woman's metaphor for growth in a new place. Over the following weeks, I returned to the market many times, sometimes with Somchai, sometimes alone. Each visit built my confidence, not just in bargaining, but in navigating Thai culture more broadly. I began to recognize regular vendors who would greet me with increasing familiarity. The fruit seller always saved her sweetest mangoes for me, and the craftsman asked about my teaching experiences. The lime leaf plant thrived on my windowsill, and true to the elderly woman's words, as it grew, so did my understanding of Thailand. I learned that bargaining wasn't about winning or getting the lowest possible price. It was about establishing a connection, acknowledging the value of both the item and the person selling it, and finding a price that honored both. This lesson extended beyond the market. In my classroom, I began to see teaching as a similar kind of negotiation, finding the balance between what I wanted to impart and what my students needed to learn, creating a space where both perspectives were valued. 3. Months in Thailand stretched into 6, then a year, as I extended my teaching contract. The market became a regular part of my life, a place where I not only shopped but also practiced language, made friends, and continued to learn about my adopted home. And it all began with that first intimidating day when I learned to bargain. Not just for goods, but for understanding across cultures. Did you enjoy this journey through the vibrant markets of Thailand? If this story helped you improve your English while entertaining you, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with friends who are learning English or planning a trip to Thailand. Drop a comment below with your own bargaining experiences or questions about any vocabulary you'd like explained further. And don't forget to subscribe to Story-Driven English for more engaging stories that make learning English an adventure. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Until next time, keep practicing your English through stories. Key vocabulary. Repeated throughout. Bargaining. To negotiate the price of something. Example. I learned that bargaining wasn't about winning. Vendor. A person who sells things, especially on the street. Example. The vendor smiled as she handed me the bag. Stall. A small shop with an open front, especially one selling goods in a market. Example. The market had thousands of stalls, selling everything imaginable. Haggle. To argue about the price of something before agreeing to buy it. Example. The idea of haggling over prices seemed foreign to me. Negotiate. To try to reach an agreement by discussion. Example. I began to see teaching as a similar kind of negotiation. Culture shock. The feeling of confusion when visiting a country that is very different from your own. Example. Culture shock was hitting me hard, overwhelmed, to feel suddenly confused or unable to cope. Example. I was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the sensory input. Aisle. A passage between rows of stalls or shelves. Example. We moved through narrow aisles between stalls. Sensory overload. When your senses are overwhelmed by too much input. Example. The market was a sensory overload. Exhilaration. A feeling of excitement and happiness. Example. I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and guilt. Auspicious. Showing signs that future success is likely. Example. This elephant is very auspicious. Figurine. A small statue. Example. I was drawn to a small wooden elephant figurine. Craftsmanship. A skilled worker who makes things by hand. The skill of making things by hand. Example. His weathered hands spoke of years of craftsmanship. Counteroffer. An offer made in response to another offer. Example. I understood the rhythm of the offer and counteroffer. Transaction. An instance of buying or selling something. Example. I observed other transactions and noticed the rhythm.